Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome again to another in the Total You series. This is being brought to you by the Office of the Assistant Dean for Student Experience in the Faculty of Science and Technology. This is for all of you. This is the My FST experience, and the entire team is happy to be able to immerse with our students in this kind of way. We had a blast in the Total You Part 1, and we are about to have a blast. A very fulfilling, satisfying, and transformative experience is here for you this afternoon. So we want everybody to relax, and just immerse, okay? My job, I am Dr. Marvadine Singh Wilmot. I am the Associate Dean for the Student Experience in the Faculty of Science and Technology, and I just want to wish you welcome and good afternoon. I want to hand you over now to your student host, who is Mr. Andre Gordon. Do not forget that this event is brought to you from the Office of the Associate Dean for Student Experience in association with your FST Guild Committee. Our young student leaders are excellent at having your interest at heart and organizing these things for having impact on you and your lives. So your host this afternoon is Andre Gordon, and Andre Gordon is a proud pelican of the FST. He is the FST GC's assistant treasurer. He's a second-year student, and he's majoring in mathematics with education. He's a current tutor and content creator at One Place Academy. He works also with MST VET. He's an awardee of MST VET and PALAS. And I want to now hand over to you. There are some people in the audience I want to call out to. I will do that later on. I am going to have to hold my excitement and hand over to Andre Gordon, everybody.
All right, so good evening, everyone. Let me welcome you to today's Total You session, part 2. Without you, this would have been possible. So we thank you guys for taking the time out to at least join. And I hope that today's session will be one that you will get something from. Even if it's just one thing you get from today, you can be able to apply whatever you learn today in your various life, to achieve your goals and dreams, and etc. So guys, we thank you for being here. Good afternoon again to everyone. Good afternoon, Kenisha. I've seen that in the chat. Guys, so stick around, guys. We have credit giveaway at the end. So listen keenly to everything that goes on in today's session. Right? It's promised to be a great.
Whoa, whoa, yeah. I have the heart of a champion, yeah. Heart of a champion. It's my time, it's my place, it's my destiny. No one can take away what was meant for me. My granny said, what for you can be unfilled. No man never see where God plan for you. Yeah, the best is yet to come. If I believe I can, I will. No holding back, no giving in. Cause I know I was born to win. Was born to win, I was born to win, I was born to win. I have the heart of a champion. I have the heart of a champion. Through the pain, through the dark nights, through the storm, I remain and I strive, I will carry on. Yeah, yeah. 7 times fall, 10 times rise. Yes, I open my eyes, and now I see the sun. If I believe I can, I will. No holding back, no giving in. Cause I know I was born was born to win. I was born to win. I was born to win. I have the heart of a champion. You have the heart of a champion. If I believe I can, I will. No holding back, no giving in. 'Cause I know I was born to win. Was born to win. I 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 was born to win.
So that was Born to Win, a song by Alain, covered here today by Shauna Lee Steele. Right, so thank you so much for that performance, Shauna Lee. I was here vibing, behind the camera. I was really enjoying the song, to be honest with you. So thank you so much, Shauna. FST talent is really deep. So it's more than just the grade of our talent, So I thank you very much for that, Shauna. And I hope to see you, at other sessions as well, and spreading your talent throughout the world. All right, guys. So we're gonna go into, right. So I see in the comment section that persons really loved Shauna Lee performance, and I too enjoyed it. I was here, All right, guys. So we have two presenters today. All right. So thank you for being here, Dr. Reed and Dr. Gajida. I know hand over to you, guys. So pay attention, guys. Listen, and observe what our speaker have to say. So I hand over to you, our presenters for today.
So I'll be going first, and it's good to be with the FST family, the Pelican family in the Faculty of Science and Technology. Dr. Gadget and myself are hoping to share and really have a conversation with you. Dr. Sim Wilmot, thank you for the invitation, and we look forward to interacting and sharing. So I have a short presentation that I'd like to share. Here we go. So, 1 second, guys. Okay, yeah. So essentially, as Andre indicated, the topic is the 21st century workplace, skills for success. He told you a bit about the management of applied sciences, and I want to share really from 3 perspectives. First, I want to say to you, it's important to have a vision for your life generally. What do you want to do with your life? And with respect to this presentation, we want to focus on your working life in particular. We're going to talk a little bit now about some employability skills for the 21st century STEM students. And we look primarily from the employer's perspective, looking at data that comes out of the US. Unfortunately, we have not put up a robust system to collect data as much as we want in the Caribbean. And then once we look at those, we want to look at some things that are important for achieving excellence. You got a job, you're employed. How do you make your dreams happen? So first thing, it's very, very important to find out what you really want to do in life. And I keep coming upon persons who, after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and sometimes with very successful lives, who indicated, I'm doing this job, I have some success, but this is not what I really want to do. So it's important for you to take the time, perhaps talking with mentors, perhaps seeking guidance with persons in the faculty, in your community, in the professional field. Think about and try and map out, what do I want to do with my life? I have one life. How do I want to maximize it? It's important that you are technically trained and competent for whatever you want to do, and you're pursuing degrees, or you have pursued degrees within the UE. So we know you'll be equipped with the skills, the technical skills to go forward. But as Andre said, you need a little bit more. I'm going to suggest to you that you marry this with your talents and natural abilities. So I'll give you an example of a classmate that we actually came up from prep school, high school, university, and I'm a Calabar boy. So we got together, unfortunately at the death of his mom, but it was a good chance to see old friends. And he actually just changed careers midstream. So he's a computer science graduate, but his passion is really art. And he's starting a whole new career, and he's just blooming because he has realized, he said a little late, but he's happy he's doing it, that he's now matching those technical computing skills with where his passion really is. Where's your natural ability? It's important to try and work that out early. It's also important to do things that you really love. You know, they say if you work at your hobby, you don't work a day in your life. So it's important to love what you do, because it's your whole life you're going to spend at this thing, or a lot of it. And it's very, very important to find your niche in activities that make you fulfilled. You know, and because that makes the total you. So that's where I want to start. I want to start to say that, hey, all of us need a vision for our life. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit. So in preparing for this, I looked at the literature, you know, I was trying to find the appropriate tools to sort of provide you some guidance. And I found a paper in particular, which looks at the employability skills between what are employability skills. And really employability skills are the skills that make the difference between an employer choosing between one employee and the next, right? An employee who, from an HR perspective, who does a task when asked to do so, who really only works on request, versus an engaged employee who takes the initiative and thrives when working in a team. This survey looked at HR graduates with appropriate employability skills. And it says that really an employee who fits the latter category is more satisfied, performs better, gives more and more on the job, and you have less turnover. So for an employer, finding this kind of employee is what he or she is looking for. In terms of 21st century skills, refers to a broad set of knowledge skills, work habits, character traits that are vital for success in future work. So what are we talking about? Ways of thinking. Are you creative? Are you innovative? Do you have critical thinking skills? Do you problem solve? Are you good at decision making? Are you learning to learn? And a very important attribute in terms of ways of thinking is a term called metacognition, which is really understanding how you think, how you learn, and being able to manage that process, and being able to productively express what you learn in the workplace. Ways of working. Can you communicate well? Do you collaborate well? Do you have the literary tools for working? Are you competent with the different tools of the work environment? Are you ICT literate? And more importantly, as we go into a world that's in peril, you're talking about values, citizenships, values. You know, do you care about the world around you? Do you care about your neighbor? How does that express itself through you, in the company you work for? How does that make a whole package? Now, these skills have been referred to as transferable skills. Now, we're in COVID-19, and we all know that some of you who came to university didn't expect this. And in prosperous times and The challenge with the Caribbean is that we haven't had many of those periods in our history. But in prosperous times, employers seek employees who have well-developed transferable skills. And usually this is an economy that is looking for people that is trying to maximize what you have coming out of university. But in periods of economic uncertainty, perhaps like now, the labor market is unpredictable, and employers may adopt other criteria for recruitment. So better qualified graduates may have greater employment opportunities than lesser qualified graduates. And many times, and it's especially happening here, graduates are forced to take positions below their levels of competence or outside of their area of expertise. So for example, when I talk to young people in my community, and many of them are university graduates and they're unhappy with going to call centers. So they feel underutilized. So sometimes that happens. And how do you position yourself? How do you make yourself more marketable? How do you make yourself more competitive in the work environment? Now, the study I looked at was a study by an American, McGonigal, and she really looked at in the paper, looking at 5 areas of the US across 5 industries. What are the most important skills employers in the manufacturing sector is looking for? How do the skills of employees in the manufacturing sector compare with other STEM industries? And more importantly, how can universities utilize this data to help to prepare our graduates a little bit better for the work world? So what she does, she looked at HR hiring managers from manufacturing industry, and in a specific part of the study, she compared them with airline, aerospace, and defense industries. And I picked this deliberately because I think the manufacturing industry, I think, perhaps most appropriately represents our graduates and where a lot of our graduates are hoping to work. And the aerospace and defense industry is heavily dependent on research. And I think it brings up a good comparison of skill sets that are required. Now, if you look at this, there are 16 skill sets that came out. And I've highlighted all of them. For the manufacturing sector, you're looking at a team player, looking for people who are self-motivated, good verbal communication skills, good problem-solving skills, proactivity is very, very important. Coming back to an employee who has a vision, who takes the initiative in getting things done, decision-making, adaptability. And I want to contrast those 6 or so with the 6 on the aerospace defense industry, which is more research oriented. And they're looking at adaptability, good problem solving skills, ability to gather data, being a team player, being proactive as well, and being self-motivated. And there are a number of other skills there that you can see for yourself. I've highlighted in red the skills that cross over. And I've also highlighted both blue and green in terms of self-motivation and adaptability as 2 important skills that may not have made it in the top 5, but certainly up there. So these are the skills that came out of the survey, and we can talk some more about that in the conversation we hope to have with you afterwards. But I also want to say, okay, so you get a job and you're developing some of these skills, but how do you translate that into excellence? And there's a blogger. His name is Hanan Parvez. I think he has a really excellent blog looking at life skills. He's a psychologist, and I'm sorry, I recommend you to look at the blog. But he has something about, he titled it, How Do You Become a Genius? And I really wanted to paraphrase that and say really about achieving excellence. And he really highlighted 12 areas which I couldn't top. So I thought I'd share them with you. Passion, focus, hard work, curiosity, patience, self-confidence, which is very important for persons from all parts of the world, and we'll talk some more about that. Creativity, openness and flexibility, tolerance for ambiguity, risk-taking, thinking deeply, and sacrifice. Just a little bit more about each one of those. Coming back to what I said, you have to have passion for what you're doing. Steve Jobs' quote, it makes no sense that you put a huge time and effort into something if you don't love the process of putting in all that time and effort. You really, really have to love what you do. Focus. Life is very short and it will fly by very quickly. And you have to understand you have limited resources and you have to invest your attention, energy, and time and effort in your craft. Not to the exclusion of everything else, but if you're going to be successful at what you do, you have to put in the time. Critically, achieving a successful work life involves hard work. And many of us will have the experience, even in our communities, where people think that you can actually achieve success without hard work. And it causes a lot of the problems that we see around us, right? So usually, where you are now in terms of studying, where you are now in terms of moving into the job world, the beginning phase of mastering something is usually the hardest. So you have to focus. There's a book I read, Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell. He's from Jamaican extract. Excellent book if you can get it. He really develops the thing of mastery. And he really says, listen, whether you're a footballer or a lawyer or a top scientist or a physician, nobody's born with those gifts. You really have to put in the time to achieve mastery. And they suggest about 10,000 hours, which is about 10 years. And he talks a lot about some of those persons who achieve genius status, whether it's Messi at 21 or Beethoven or Bach at 21. And when you look at the start of their careers, they start at 10 or 11. So regardless of what you do, you have to put in those hours to achieve mastery. So the quicker you realize that, and the more the quicker you put that time in, is the quicker you will reach mastery in your profession. Sometimes we fold up at obstacles and challenges. I want to suggest to you that you see those challenges as opportunities to become better at your craft. It's important that throughout your working life that you remain curious. Don't lose your magic. And sometimes I have had to fight to hold on to it, because all of us are come up we are born with a childhood curiosity that allows us to question things and also with a desire to continuously learn. It's important to be patient because some things take time. And despite your best efforts, it's not going to go in a linear way. So it's important that you realize that things take time and be patient with yourself and be patient with the process. Critically, I want to spend a little more time on this. It's important to have self-confidence and high self-esteem. It's one of the most powerful things that helps you to achieve your goals because you're going to spend a whole lot of time. And anybody who's here, who's working, whether in the lab, whether it's teaching, whether it's in industry, to build your career, you have to put in the time, but you have to be confident in your vision and in your dream. And I wanted just to mention somebody who's important to all of us. You have Marcus Garvey. He said, if you have confidence in self, if you have not confidence in self, you're twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you have started. So confidence is important. You have to be creative. It's important to let your thoughts run wild, to be open to new ideas, to allow yourself to dream, to think, to it's a cliche, but to think outside the box, but more importantly, uniquely from your perspective, trust in your own ideas. It's important to be open and flexible. This requires humility. And what I say is that if you're arrogant and set in your ways, it may limit your success. And we have to have tolerance for ambiguity. Things don't work out exactly how we want it, when we want it. We have to understand that sometimes to achieve goals, you have to take risk. Sometimes you're the only one who sees something. You're the only one who believes something. If if you believe it enough, you have to be prepared to stand on your own. It's important to understand what you're doing. Think deeply. There's no shortcut in this world. Also, it's important that, again, I want to emphasize, not to the exclusion of everything else, but you have to make sacrifices. Maybe you have to choose the 2 or 3 things in your life that are important and put the time in. I just want to highlight the last point on this slide. If you do not sacrifice for what you want, then what you want will become the sacrifice. Now, I want to end where I started. In all of this, it's important to have a vision for your life, to be properly trained, to match that training with your natural talent and abilities, to do the things that you love and do activities that make you fulfilled. Dr. Gajadar?
Thanks, Howard. I think maybe we could combine the questions. Should I go right ahead?
Combine the question. Just go ahead. Yes.
Okay. Thanks for that presentation, because it sets the stage for what I'd like to share with all of you with regards to applying these skill sets that Howard spoke about. He explained in much detail. How do we apply it in the workplace to achieve what we'd like? Can everybody see my screen? Is it up? It's okay?
It's up, it's up.
Okay, thanks. And all of what he spoke about and the research supports it speaks to the human factor. I've called it the missing link between existence and excellence, because at school, in academia, we have prescribed modules, timetables. We work within a framework. To excel, however, we need to, as Howard also said, expand beyond that. And the only vehicle through which you could do this is through understanding you, the human being, and your interactions with others around you. So, at the end of my discussion, I'm hoping that I pulled off some of the attributes that Howard spoke of, that this research paper confirmed many attributes, but I'll just focus on 4 of them. The role, a deeper understanding of the role of a team player in achieving excellence, self-motivation, that was found to be a very desirable attribute by employers, leadership, and I'll just touch on leadership. There was a plethora of information about leadership, huge body of knowledge, but we'll just touch on it and how it can, you can apply it within your daily activities. And of course, good communication, all of them relating to the human factor and interactions between each other. A lot of what I'm going to speak of is focused on the work of Patrick Lencioni. You can type him up when you have time on the internet. He's a prolific writer on building teams within the organization. And this is a quote from one of his books. It makes so much sense that you could have the smartest people within any organization, but the major challenge is getting everybody working in the same direction. And there are some organizations with very little resources. Their competitiveness cannot match others with lots of resources, the best IT systems, the best of everything, but the relationships, the human factor is wanting. And this is why I like starting off always with this quote from Patrick. Patrick looks at the difference between what he calls a smart organization versus a healthy organization. There's been a lot of talk now in the business world about healthy organizations, comparing the system within an organization to a living system. And so by virtue of that, the opposite could be a sick organization where relationships are so toxic that you can't thrive. And that's clear to see. But what about the smart organizations? The one that have the best minds and pay consultants to do elaborate strategic plan and exercises. They have the best marketing people, lots of noise out there. The smartest people, particularly, of course, the buzzword is metrics that are just driven by the finances, and at board meetings, they only look at are these figures. And they can boast of certifications, for instance, to operational standards such as ISO 9000, HACCP, etc. But yet still, some of these businesses fail. And the statistics are out there. Companies that have won the Malcolm Baldrige Awards that's based on quality management systems and all the best things can end up folding if we don't get the health of the organization right. And everything to do with the health of the organization is focused on people. A lot was said about the cohesiveness of teams. And here I have leadership teams, but there are all types of teams within an organization. Quality circles, there is research teams, all sorts of teams. Clarity. And to get clarity, you need good communication. You need to be able to say what you want others to believe in, whatever new policy that you want galvanizing people around. Engaged employees goes without saying, with minimal internal politics. And by politics, I mean people on their own agenda with ulterior motives, apart from the motive of the purpose of the organization, which all of you, wherever you go out to work, even if you set up your own business, even if you're a sole proprietor, you will have an organization because you would need to be dealing with people. And of course, the adequate level of structure, not too much structure. There are two sides of the spectrum to this, where you have too much structure and too bureaucratic. But then some structure to allow for continuity. And of course, risk-based thinking is it's about planning. Agility, Howard also pointed to this attribute, the ability to change, accept change, and feel comfortable with it. I've never come across any business person who says that they don't want improved products or services. They all want it. But improving requires change, a culture of change. And that starts with the person. And so your ability to adapt to changing circumstances quickly has everything to do with whether or not whatever organization you're part of or you set up for yourself when you go out there is healthy enough to ride the times of all financial crises, external crises, natural disasters, because it will happen. There's no business that says highly profitable forever and ever. When the research again shows it's always cyclical, dips and ups and downs, but your people keep it going. And so what did I think that you'd like to know about being a good team player? I think there's some basics that first starts with a model that, again, Patrick Lencioni uses called humble, hungry, smart. To be an ideal team player, you need to have just enough of all of those three attributes. So right in the center of this Venn diagram. And I'll explain a little. The first attribute, humility, is the God above all. I mean, and we know through biblical times that Jesus all of our clean prophets, that humility. But what do we talk about when we say being humble? There are two types of humility in the workplace. On one end, you have the very obvious one, which is a bit more dangerous than the second type. And it's based on the egotistical type. The individual who probably spent a lot of time just talking, sucking up all the time at meetings and talking about themselves and what they've done and this and that. And so that's one side of the spectrum of the absence of humility. There's another aspect that I'd like you to pay attention to, which is equally as important, not as dangerous, but it's sometimes overlooked. And that is the individual who thinks less of themselves, who does not have the confidence in their ability. Both aspects relate to a lack of humility, and I'll explain why. Because both of them originate from a place of insecurity and lack of understanding of your self-worth. So on one end of the spectrum, when you have the egotistical person who's blowing up, and all of them, the origin is insecurity, that perhaps lack of understanding of their own self-worth. So they have this grandiose picture, and it takes up a lot of time within the organization to deal with these sort of personalities. The opposites, of course, were same insecurity, a lack of understanding of the individual's self-worth, is those that would underplay themselves and they never shine. They never, that self-confidence Howard spoke of, that can be equally dangerous on a team. Humility is sometimes often said, it's not about thinking less of yourself, not about thinking less about yourself, but thinking less of yourself. Rather. So you have to need to get that balance, that security, self-esteem, self-confidence to be able to make mistakes and own up to it. And I'll speak a little bit more about this later. The other element that Patrick speaks of a lot is being hungry. And that goes smack into the passion Howard spoke of. You need to want to work. And employers look for this a lot when they're interviewing candidates. How hungry is this person for the job? Is it something that they just, they're not demonstrating they have a passion for? Well, chances are you're not going to really impress your potential employer. You need to have that hunger where you want to stay at it day in, day out. And I was, forgive me if I'm a product of UWI Mona, and Professor Kaur was my professor at the time. And I recall in those days when we were at it at the laser, late at night, 24 hours, he used this word a lot. He said, you have to be hungry for this. You need to stay at it. And the science has shown it. But you don't want, and I'll speak about, there's some, before I go into the attributes that an individual can have where they perhaps have too much of two of them and not much of the other, you get other issues, dynamics that you need to deal with within the workplace. The smart part is not the IQ smart we're talking about. Again, there is no shortage of that. Many degrees, first class this, first class that. We're talking about people smarts, the emotional intelligence smarts, to understand the sort of empathy that you have for your co-workers. That's what that smart is referring to. Let's speak a little bit. There are some little adjectives that have populated a Venn diagram to describe an individual, because I'm sure all of us have come across these sort of personalities in the workplace where, if somebody has the extent of the humility where everything is, they don't think enough about themselves to speak up, and so they could be easily considered a pawn. Just yes, everything. Somebody's just too hungry, not humble enough and smart enough, doesn't understand people interactions. He calls it the bulldozer in the workplace, where they just go, they want to do everything under their plates. Nobody has anything else to do in the workplace. You don't want that for a team. And the personality that has, okay, a good mix of humility and is hungry, but not people smart, he calls them the accidental messmaker. Why? They just want to do everything. They want to help you out, but maybe they don't have that self-esteem to make effective decisions or change. And so you call him the accidental messmaker because I'm sure you may have come across personality when they're in the air, they want to do it, and the boy, but the head of the organization really just always has to go clean up after, or some of the manager, the supervisor, and they probably fit in that that accidental messmaker. Again, these are when you see these weaknesses in the workplace, there are tools and techniques to deal with it. And we all, at one point in our pathway, one part in our career, may have functioned in any one of those roles, but it's to become aware of yourself. As a quote, I can repeat, I can't remember who is the owner of this quote, but it said, the best leader is the self-aware leader. Not necessarily anyone, but one when you know where your shortcomings are and you work on it. Let's look at the person perhaps who is hungry for the job and understands people, very charismatic, the charmer. When you combine the two, when they're hungry for the job and they're smart, Pat describes this person as the skillful politician. And I'm sure we have experienced them, where they know just the right things to say to the boss, they move around and they work hard, and that too does not work well for the ideal team player in a healthy organization. Then you have the lovable slacker. The people who, you're not hungry for the job, you just do what's needed, 8 to 4, you go home, what you're told to do, nothing else, and you're nice. Remember, you're charged. So you can't be angry with these people around you. Pat calls these people the lovable slacker. So watch out for these 3 role plays and ask yourself, am I being a lovable slacker here, or accidental messmaker, skillful politician, or being a pawn, a bulldozer in the workplace, or in your team, or just a charmer? And if you're outside here, this is where you want to be, bringing all these attributes together in a good way. And so what is that? How does that translate to the dynamics of people working together in your household as a team? A team is any group of people working for a common purpose. We all, if it is one aspect of togetherness, we are all familiar with, and everybody who's born here and goes is teamwork. From young, you need to do SBAs, and I hear my children always complain about, gosh, this person isn't pulling up their work, this and that. You get frustrated. Your teacher puts you into some group and you have to do this. It could be a nightmare for many people. So why not, let's deal with it. And so human behavioral scientists have studied this. They know this is what is needed for excellence. And the foundational element is based on trust, but not just any trust, not a trust that I trust that you'll do that for me. That could be a pawn type of trust. Or I trust if I tell you, you'll do that. No, it's a vulnerability-based trust. And what do we mean by vulnerability-based trust? And you'll see why you need that right amount of self-confidence in the workplace. It is, you need to be working in an environment and within a team where you have the psychological safety to say, I made a mistake. Hey, this, or I don't know how to do this. Or, hey, you know, my partner got up really ill this morning, or my child couldn't, just is going through a difficult time, and speak up and acknowledge, expose yourself. Be strong enough to be vulnerable, so that others could trust you. And it's easy to differentiate when that vulnerability is not acted on or so. And some, because now, you know, there's so much literature now, people act vulnerably in front of people. And that's an excuse not to get a job. No, it's not that. But a tight, cohesive team, each member in there has to have the self-confidence to admit, say when you make mistakes, say what's going on, why you can't achieve. Oh, and speak about, not fear, speaking about yourself. Now, let's look at conflict, the other level. You need conflict in any high-performing team. In fact, Patrick Lencioni's group, the table group, when teams are being worked with to improve performance and their tools and techniques, you look for and you observe the meetings. If this is a meeting and everything is yes, yes, and the chairperson or whoever is talking, questions are raised. You're scored down. Now, there are two types of conflict. Again, the conflict is a spectrum. There's bad conflict on one end, I mean, toxic, where you just get personal. And there is no conflict, but the conflict you want is in the middle, good conflict. And conflict around suggestions, conflict around recommendations, proposals, that everybody on that team has to be confident enough or say, hey, I disagree with this. Let's thrash it out, and has a right to be heard. Commitment to decisions made. Another thing we look at when you look at the performance of the teams, that decisions made within the forum, are they really stuck to? When members of that team go out on their own to then, well, now we work in a virtual workspace, so you're actually always remote. But say you make an agreement on whatever platform, virtual or in person, and then afterwards off. Now, when there's lack of that, when there's a lot of that among the team, in a team, you normally you go back and you look at the decision-making process, because perhaps this is also a team that suffers from not enough good conflicts, that space, there's lack of trust. So individuals don't feel like they're part of the decision-making process, so you're not gonna get them committed. Peer-to-peer accountability is another important aspect, and the peer-to-peer accountability is different from accountability to the authority or the head of the organization. It's called peer-to-peer for that reason, that if a team of you has been assigned to work on a particular task, you should have that comfort and that relationship with each other on that team to hold each other up. And not wait for when the deliverable or that output has gone flat out. So for those of you, I'm sure you're in a lot of study groups or work teams, it's about telling each other, hey, you're supposed to have given this up by a particular day. What's wrong? Check in. That's important for high-performing teams. Attention to results, that cannot be overemphasized, and you all are science-based people, so you appreciate that what can't get measured can't get done. And so you need to decide on what indicators, what metrics that you use to ensure that, yes, you're making movement, you're getting things done. So this is like the triangle of 5 elements, signs of when a team is performing badly, and there are tools and techniques that are used to actually evaluate how strong the team is in that respect. In terms of, not this slide, although the word is not mentioned there, but it is implied through all the 6 stages, and that is communication. In order to create what we call strategic alignment with what may have been declared by the sponsor of the team or whoever that is, whether it is your principal, your lecturer, the leader, you need to understand, everybody needs to be on the same page and be able to answer each one of these questions. Understand why do we exist? Now, when I say we, I know I have a lot of youngsters, and it's the Gen X or Zs or whatever, asking about why do I exist, my purpose in life. Yes, that's important. Working as a team, you need to understand the purpose of the team. What was this team, this group of people? Why did it come together? So in other words, if the team is called Group One, why does Group One exist? Make sure everybody's clear on that. Establish ground rules. How do your expectations of each other? How do you behave? Usually this is guided by values. And oh Lord, the word values has been used and overused by consultants, and they go into organizations and I see all sorts of things, aspirational values, this values, but that's kind of a whole body of knowledge on that. But this guides behavior and then ultimately culture within an organization. And you need to watch out for that. What do you do? And who does what? Clarity in that. Communication again. And I have never come across any assurance of clarity in message unless it's documented. Now, by documented, we don't mean that it is written. A documented form could be anything that captures what you want. It could be a short video, a voice note, something to go back to and refer to. And of course, you set your strategy, how you will achieve what you want to do, what's most important right now. That's number 5, because a lot of time, and you all have to be on that same page, because sometimes we know the strategy as the group. We know what we must do, but we don't know the next step. And if that team has 3 people, one person thinks the next step is in this direction, another person thinks this is the next step, and no. So what is the next best thing? Everybody must be on that same page and what you do to get there. So this application I spoke of for good communication helps in the strategic alignment. Meetings, another forum that emphasizes the need for communication. And communication, I must say, meetings rather, have gotten a bad name in a lot of organizations. And I mean, it's to the extent where managers and leaders are saying, they 8 meetings, another meeting is taking so long. And, but what are we doing? This is the only forum we could discuss and exchange ideas. It's like a surgeon telling a nurse, oh gosh, I love being a surgeon. If I didn't have to operate, I hate operating. Because this is when you're in the workplace, this is what it's about. And I think we've all have suffered from a lot of bad meetings. And that's why some of us may tend to hate this word called meetings, because sometimes, Pat calls it a meeting stew, where you put everything together. You talk about that meeting, gets sidetracked if somebody maybe talks about a personal issue or some other topical issue, and then you mix up strategic conversations with all different things. So what we advise is that team of the organization, everybody that you are responsible for in that team, your team members, check in with each other, daily check-ins. How are you doing? How are things going on? So that way you don't, when you meet, if it's once a month to talk about tactical things or topical things, you don't clutter it with a lot of the life story type of conversation, which is important, but perhaps if you have limited time to talk about a topical issue, is not. And that's just what I'll say on the issue of meetings, because it is all implied in the need to be able to communicate and communicate well. And it's not an excuse that I don't like talking, or I must be some form. Choose your form that you can communicate in and communicate well in. a little bit about self-motivation, although I spoke about it earlier and it was implied, but Howard mentioned it a lot. And I introduced to you, some of you may have been exposed to it, the working genius, because self-motivation, I have never come across somebody who is self-motivated when they're doing something they don't like and they're just frustrated with it. And Howard touched on that when he spoke of vision and finding your purpose, what you're good at. To develop a skill at something, he spoke of spending a lot of time at it. And how can you spend a lot of time at something you just don't like doing? Clearly, you can't excel in that. So let's find what you like doing. Now, traditionally, the term genius was attached to invention and making new things. But Pat's model of the widget speaks of 5 different elements of geniuses, all of which are critically important for getting work done and done well. And personal excellence, when you understand where you get your elements. The theory is based on, and there is an IA tool that is used, you can check it out yourself to determine what your working genius is. And when you do this assessment and you find out, well, yes, okay, there are usually 2 attributes that people get energized doing, where when they're in that activity, whatever profession they're in, and in today's world, doing a science subject, you will just gives you the prerequisites to land yourself anywhere. You could end up in any field, medicine, manufacturing, engineering, or administration, like I have spent most of my life doing. But the scientific principles remain. But once you find out what is it that you like doing, energizes. So Pat's model is based on 2 elements that you find out that it's your genius, you do well, and 2 other elements that he calls working frustrations, that when you're doing it, you don't get energized, you realize you have to do it, but it just drains you. Like at the end of the day, you don't know why you're so drained to do it, and it's probably because you're doing something that you didn't like. I found out mine, and I could expose mine. I'm an IG. So in the team, we call ourselves IGs, and invention and galvanizing. And so I can spend hours talking to people. And if once I believe in something, philosophy and getting galvanizing people, and it does not tire me. But you put me to enable to just do something, or in any other space, I probably get drained after a while, or the tenacity to finish. That sort of, but some people are gifted with that. They just they want to finish, get things done. And I ask you to get to know your working genius so that you can be whatever you are with it, whatever business you run, you can be self-motivated. And for God's sake, make the work enjoyable. And to make it enjoyable, so having all of that, where you've identified your genius, you're in the workspace, you're working with people, avoid these 3 things. Nobody enjoys doing work that's irrelevant. And doing research, I could tell you, there is a huge propensity for you to get disconnected with the relevance of what you're doing. Find it. It must be meaningful. Otherwise, you wouldn't be enjoying it. And that's the human factor. Anonymity. Nobody likes to be in a workplace where the people, the organization, or the people you're working for, they don't recognize you as a person. You're just, oh, this person there, this person that. Work can't be enjoyable with that. And so, whilst we're speaking of skills for the 21st century, we're also hoping to leave you with what to look out for you to find your joy, to excel. And we spoke about immeasurability. Definitely not doing things that nobody can tell, yes, whether it was done or it was done well. some sort of measure. We're not talking about sophisticated figures. It could be qualitative or quantitative, but some level of measurability for what you do. And a little bit about leadership, the last part, I just want, because there is so much information out there about leadership, well, I'd like to differentiate leadership from management, because we're asking all of you to demonstrate leadership in everything you do. And it's not the leader where, yes, you're the leader of the organization, you're the head of this, that's another type of leadership that deals with governance and all sorts of things. But the leadership in you is speaking to making the right decisions. That speaks to effective performance. Effective performance is always checking that, yes, what I'm doing is what is needed by whoever it is, or it is based on my judgment, it is the right thing to do. That's the leadership we're talking about. And there's so many skills you could develop to listen to that inner voice, evaluate, use your experiences. But it looks at when there's leadership in the workplace at all levels, you get effective performance, meaning that you don't have a team of people because the boss says, you do this, I leave a checklist, and you do check, check, check. But yet still, the customer is not satisfied. The person who's receiving your service or good is meaningless to them. And so although you've done what you had to do, you have not been effective, and that business will close down. So always check. And that is on the versus the efficient performance. And normally when we speak of efficiency, we talk about management, how you allocate resources. So leadership versus management, each one of us will be playing that in everything, that role in everything to do. A leadership hat, a management hat. And when you're dealing with management, you're looking at, okay, ensuring that we're getting what needs to be done, that has been checked, that we have leadership, good leadership, that we're doing the right thing anyway, and you're getting it done in the most efficient manner. And so I just thought I should share these parting words with you on leadership, because we all are leaders in our own right. We're leadership responsible for our own individual success, happiness. And once you have that, get that sweet spot, the rest is history. Thank you.